G'day YouTube, Tom here in the Built Moto garage. We've just finished wrapping the wiring up on this XT500 Scrambler build, and I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to take you guys through our black box, the accessories kit, and also the handlebar buttons that we use. What we've put together is a point of view wiring video of the end-to-end wiring process that we've used on this bike, which can be applied to any motorcycle that you choose to put it on with a few slight variations. Aside from this video, we've also cut together a quick guide that'll run you through only the black box install and then a few tips and tricks on the testing before you fire your bike up. If you want to watch that, make sure you click the link below to go to the quick guide. Alright, so we're going to run you guys through a POV of us wiring a motorcycle up. This is a 1978 XT500. We've custom built the loom. We're wiring the black box, but a precursor to wiring in your black box is getting your cables run back to the battery box and electrics tray here, but also making another connection, which generally we hide underneath the tank. So this is where we connect our speedo cables, our headlights and front indicators, brake switch, and we also mount the horn up under here as well. So run you through a few tips that we use to wire our bikes to make sure A, everything works reliably, and B, if ever you need to fault find, it's going to be an easy job. So first thing we do here to save a lot of confusion is just to separate out all of our ground wires. So we've got a ground coming from the battery box. We have grounds for our lighting. All these will just be pushed out of the way for now until we get our connections made, and then we'll ground those to the frame. So a really important part of any motorcycle wiring loom is making sure you have a good grounding system. So we've got a large black cable coming up here that will be used as a secondary frame ground, and we'll also loop that into an engine ground here. We've also got on our starter circuit and charging circuit, a ground back here and a large ground onto the engine. We've also got our primary frame ground, which is back here in the electrics tray. Okay, so now we've got our grounds tucked out of the way. What I'll do to make life easy for myself here in wiring is grab a temporary little zip tie and tie our cables in place so they're not going to move. So what we want to do is we have our cables coming from the electrics tray and our switches here, and then these are all of our lights and accessories. We've got our speedo pickup here and all of that stuff. So, you know, in order to give ourselves the best chance of making this nice and tidy, we'll just lock these cables in place and then we can start making our connections. Easiest place for me to start generally is to hook up our lighting circuits. So I'll separate out our lighting here. Goes way back there, it's our ground. So you've got our lighting feed and then a lighting connection. So we've got our left and right indicators coming from the front. And put our brake switches and all that sort of stuff in here too. So these crimp connections here that we're using are actually an individual terminal that comes out of the Deutsch plugs. So the Deutsch plugs have, you know, a number of these and they get locked in place. So these are rated up to 10 amp, these ones, which is well above what these circuits will actually be carrying when they're under load. So safe enough. And then because they're not housed within a plug, if we had, you know, enough Deutsch plugs to connect all of these cables, there'd be a lot of bulk here. So what we do is use heat shrink on either side of these to connect them up. Okay, so now we've got our headlights connected. We'll just tuck these behind again so they're out of our way. You can sit back there. So again, another little tip with these is always leave a bit of loop on length, because I mean, regardless how good you are, there's going to be something that needs changing or something that that goes wrong and you're going to have to cut the connection and do something, you know, it just happens. So always leave a little bit of length, so when you have to change something eventually, you have enough cable there to go through, and make sure that you can get those connections done again properly, and you're not going to have to solder on joins and just start making more of a mess. Next thing we connect up here will be our indicator circuits. And on our indicator circuits, we make sure that you've got your indicator feed. These are your left and right indicators, and then you also got to include the dash lights up here. So that's why we have the joint under the tank, because you sort of got everything in this vicinity to make your connections as neat as possible. There's plenty of other ways to do it, but this is how we get it done. So I'm up to our final connections here now, being the ground. So I've just finished doing our positive connection. So positive switch 12 volt from the accessory circuit that'll run our speedo and gauge cluster. You've also got the positive that goes down to the speedo pickup, and the brake switch positive as well. So basically this circuit does everything outside of your black box, and the black box will run the rest. With our ground connections, so these are all of our LED ground wires. So you've got a bunch of tiny little cables here. What I'll do for those is strip them back and solder them onto a larger 15 amp cable, and then that'll get connected down to the frame. All right, so I've just finished up these final connections here. These will be, as I said before, left loose until our testing is finished. So from here, I've just put a bit of tape on there to hold it in place. We've got pretty much everything linked up, and then once this is all tested, it'll be sort of taped up and secured properly in behind there. So I'm just going to extend our rear indicators. This is our brake light and number plate light here. So those will be long enough, and we'll put a splitter on that to make sure that we're getting our tail end brake light. And then our rear indicators, we're using our 3-in-1 hollow tips, but they're just going to act as indicators, so the red will just stay disconnected. And with this, you want to make sure that you leave, again, the same as we did at the front connection, enough length that if you need to change the connection or something, that you have room enough on the cable to do so. You see that I'm twisting these cables, and then if you've got, I guess, under 2 cables in one terminal connection, give it a fold, and that just gives you a nice bit of meat to bite down on under the screw terminal. There, right, so with our indicators and headlight hooked up, now we go ahead and hook up our switches here. So with my lights and switches hooked up now, I like to do the kill and start button. So I'll run you through that. On this bike, the XT500, the kill switch just needs to be grounded out. So we've upgraded this bike with a performance CDI and 12 volt upgrade system, but it still retains the same kill switch. So basically you use the handlebar switch, which switches to ground, and connect that straight to your kill switch wire. On a lot of old enduros and dirt bikes and road trails, this is exactly how it's done. Now, usually an XT500 doesn't have an electric start, but this one does. So your starter button can get linked up. So this is running to our handlebar switch. This cable here runs down to our starter solenoid, and our buttons can handle up to 3 amps at 12 volts. So that's enough
capacity to switch directly from your handlebar button to your starter relay. You don't have to worry about running it through the black box, which is why we don't include a circuit within the box that does your starter. So the cables that I've got here, and I'll flash up a little graphic on the screen that shows you the circuit that we provide to link up your kill switch, which is where you would use these. So those are going to be unused, so I'll heat shrink those, and then those will just get terminated into the electric tray here in case they ever need to be swapped out or used. So you'll notice I'm just holding our grounds out of the way for now, revealing the few cables that we have left to hook up, and then at the end I'll run all of our grounding cables. So the last few things that I'm hooking up here are the accessories power, which runs power to our horn, that's the power to our brake light switches, and also the power for the speedo and dash lights at the front. So just connected that up here. And the final thing that we have to do in terms of our lighting is connect up our brake light splitter. So that'll include the 2 brake switches and the running light that goes through a splitter and then into our brake light. All right, so I've just finished up doing our last connections. We've got our earth connected, the charging system and ignition system is finished. And now it's time to run through a few tests before we put power to the black box. So with everything connected, we'll turn the key on. No battery connected at all yet, so you don't want any power through this system. So we've got all of our connections done. I've got my multimeter that's set to ohms or bell test, so it'll make a noise when we've got a connection. Leave all your fuses in at this point. So the first check that we want to do here is check your grounding through the whole bike. So this is a really key point that I tell a lot of people always when I'm finding problems on old bikes, is that their grounding's not good enough. So connect one side of your multimeter to the battery ground and then go through all of your frame grounding points. So we've got really low readings are what we're looking for. You don't want anything over 2 ohms. If it's over 2 ohms, you need to go check your grounding again. So these are all really nice and low. Couple of points on the motor, down to 0.1 of an ohm. Up on the front end here, that's fine. Got grounding everywhere that it should be. So now with that checked, we can move on to our next test. The next check is making sure that you don't have an earth anywhere there shouldn't be one. So checking through on your positive circuits from a terminal strip. So you shouldn't get any readings through here. So that test has shown everything's sweet. The one thing that you will find is if you have an incandescent tail light or headlight, you will get a ground connection, but you shouldn't read 0. It should read the resistance of the lamp, which might be 6 ohms or something like that. But aside from that, you shouldn't have earth anywhere on your terminal strip, especially if you're running LEDs. Next check that we go through here is making sure that our buttons are switching when they are pressed. So as we've gone through, we've got our switch buttons along here. Now we just need to check that the right button is doing the right thing. So these should all switch to ground. So we'll start with our headlight button. Get a connection there. This one will be our right indicator. So we get a connection there. Left indicator. Kill switch. And the starter button. All right, so that's sweet. Now we've got to check our horn, which is connected to our positive here. Sweet, so that's all 6 buttons correctly tested. So now we're starting to look at putting power onto the bike and adding the fuses and making sure that these fuses are protecting the right thing. So at this point in the test, you want to make sure that you pull your fuses out. So take that's our accessories fuse, and then we have our black box fuse.
Now, depending on your model bike, you might have a couple more of these. This bike in particular doesn't run a main fuse as such, so we've just got the 2 circuit protection fuses here. And depending on how you choose to wire it up, you can run more fuses as well. I just try to keep things simple. So what we want to check here is that we have a connection from our battery to the incoming side of our switching coil or your key, which is there. And then this battery lead should not be connected to anywhere else in our system because the relay is currently off. Now we need to check our fuse on the outgoing side. Goes to our accessories, and it does, but it doesn't feed our black box. So if you had a connection from here and you also had a connection here, you know that you've got a crossed wire somewhere, and this fuse will be feeding your black box as well. So with that done, we can pretty confidently apply power to our bike and fire this thing up. So I'm not going to run the bike because we've got a rebuilt engine. We need to go through a few more tests, but we'll run you through some function checks on the bike. What you want to do is apply 1 fuse at a time. So that will be our accessories fuse that we'll test first. Now we switch our key off the front here, and then I'll connect the battery. As I said before, all of this stuff, you want to keep untied and unheat shrunk, all of that stuff. Leave that until you know the system works, because there's nothing worse than going through, finding you might have made a mistake in the wiring and having to pull out all of that nice work and messing your cables up again. Okay, so with our battery connector now, key is off. We set our multimeter to volts DC. Check that we have voltage to the inside of our coil switch, and then we have voltage to our inside on the key, which is correct. So our key switch up the front, as I mentioned before, we're using a mini key, which makes us, we have the need to use a relay, but you can just use your factory key to switch and you remove the need for a relay. So that tells us that we should be able to switch this on now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this accessories fuse out, turn this on. We hear the black box click. That says it's ready to go. And now we check our connection to ground here to make sure we have 12 volts on the right side of our fuse. We have 12 volts going to our black box now, which is correct. And then I just do these one at a time. So I'll pop our accessories in. We should see our, let me try and see here. So our dash is fired up, which is good. And we should have a tail light, which is also good. We've got our number plate light there. So the only other thing on our accessories circuit is the horn, which I haven't installed yet because I've got to check clearance for the tank, but I know that because I've done my tests right, that's all correct, that when I hit that button, the horn will work. So I'll check that later. So now we can chuck our fuse into the black box. Just always turn the power off again when I do that. So pop that in there. Now we can fire it up and the rest of our lights should work too, which we do. So we've had the dash fire up, got our low beams working. Check our indicators now. Guys, testing through your system is one of the most important things. I have so many guys make mistakes on wiring. They just turn the key and it ends up really messing up their system, where you burn out one of your lights or something. So just take 5 minutes to do these checks and it almost foolproofs you in making sure that you can get your system correct. Now that we know that we have all of our functions working, I can go through and check that we have spark. I can go through and check that the kill switch is doing its job. So, I mean, on this one, we'll just jump on the Kickstarter, make sure that the spark kills. And now that I know that this works, I can tidy up my cabling. The last little bit that I normally do is use our cover here, pop that on, and then while it's fresh in your mind, label all of these. So it'll be accessories power, black box power, left, right, high beam, low beam, all of that stuff. So that way, if ever you take your seat off, you know what's going on where, and you can get at it straight away. So you have your accessories, circuit, black box, your lighting here, switches there, and then you've got the starter button and kill switch on the end here with a spare terminal. Accessories fuse, key relay, and your black box fuse. And your all important grounding connection. Now we've wrapped up the black box install, you should have all the information you need to apply the install of these products onto your motorcycle. If you do have any more questions or you need to reference any diagrams, make sure you check out purposebuiltmoto.com. We've got a lot of blogs and stuff that we'll link below in the video notes.